Welcome to the Arlington Street Church podcast. Founded in 1729, Arlington Street continues today as a gathering place for progressive people of faith in the greater Boston area and beyond. We are located at the corner of Arlington and Boylston Streets, across from the Public Garden in Boston, Massachusetts. Please visit ascboston.org for more information about this historic Unitarian Universalist congregation. Arlington Street Church, gathered in love and service for justice and peace.
Welcome home. Welcome home. These words may be the sweetest, most soothing, most emotionally grounding greetings we humans can share. Welcome home. These words are a core and cherished part of our weekly service here at Arlington Street, welcoming people to a place that we sincerely hope feels like open arms ready for a hug. Safe, loving, comforting, a place at long last to be yourself. I distinctly remember the first time, just a few years ago, I heard Reverend Kim say these words from this pulpit during my first visit here. It's like she was saying them to me alone. Whether you've been coming here for years or today is your first time at Arlington Street, welcome home. It was my first time here, and those words were a most reassuring antidote. At that time, I was feeling a profound sense of homesickness. I was a new student in a new city, in her first apartment, with a new understanding of herself. Far, far, far from anything that resembled home. I imagine many of you, like me, suffered some degree of homesickness as a child. For me, it was summer camp, childhood sleepovers, overnights with my grandparents. These were at first the eagerly anticipated adventures of my restless and curious little girl self, but they rather dissolved quickly into confused days and nights filled with feelings of physical ache, dread, and loneliness. My hopes for these exciting adventures dulled, slipping just out of reach. Even as a child, I think my brave little girl understood that my homesickness was more than a childish brush with emotional immaturity. I sensed that my feelings were a little more than simply missing a physical place, my childhood home. I wanted home, yes, and I also longed for my mom's cooking, my bed, my books, my desk, my dog, my closet, my street, my pear tree. It was also much more spiritually and psychologically complicated than I could understand at that time. Almost anything can bring on a feeling of homesickness, and during my childhood, and during the last 2 years here in Boston, almost everything did. A name, a word, a smell, a taste, a memory, a touch, even a color. The feeling of homesickness is just dreadful, really. And to experience the reverberating emotional echo of it as an adult has been deeply unsettling and isolating for me. Like the aching phantom limb of some unknown hurt. With all the best intentions of helping, colleagues, friends, and family have showered me over the past few years with milquetoast platitudes, such as, home is where the heart is, or your higher power is your home, or wherever you go, you are home. Even though I had ventured out, gone on the move towards something new and unknown, away from almost everything familiar, let me assure you, these simplistic sentiments did precious little to comfort me. Today we are a people on the move, though, The 21st century has seen more people uprooting themselves and moving to a new city or a new country than at any other point in our history. A Gallup World Poll published in December 2018 found that 15% of the world's adults would move to another country if they had the opportunity. That's 750 million people ready to pack their bags and leave their hometowns. That's a lot of people who could be at serious risk for the debilitating effects of homesickness. And what about our relationship to home and homesickness post-pandemic today? In the early days of COVID, we'll all remember, some of us were stranded away from home, abroad in school, traveling for work, desperate to get a return flight home. Others found lonely isolation, confined within the same four walls of home, to be more than they could stand. This recent common experience, it seems to me, perfectly articulates the confounding paradox embedded in the metaphors of home and homesickness. In her book, Homesickness, An American History, American historian Dr. Susan Matt uncovers a fascinating hidden history of homesickness in the United States. She writes, "During my research, I visited a lot of archives, and every single archive I went to, I never came away empty-handed. Once you start looking for it, homesickness is really written all over American history." To grasp the insight of Susan Matt's research into our history of homesickness, let's first begin by understanding the etymology and genealogy of the word nostalgia. Nostalgia is a word first coined by a 17th century German physician, Johann Hofer. Nostalgia comes from the Greek words nostos, meaning homecoming, and algos, meaning pain. In other words, nostalgia originally meant homesickness. But it was not being used in Hofer's time to describe an emotion. From the 17th to the 19th century, nostalgia was seen by doctors as a serious medical condition. It included a range of symptoms, both physical and mental: fever, fatigue, digestive complaints, and depression. This homesickness at the time was actually known to cause death. If we'd all taken our homesick childhood selves back to the 18th century, we would have felt seen and heard and been greeted with some sympathetic knowing nods by our doctors. 1688 was the first time nostalgia was mentioned in the medical literature. And it was described poetically by Hofer as the grief of the lost charm of the native land. Hofer traced its physical manifestation in our bodies along uncommon routes through the untouched courses of the channels of the brain to the body. Wow. Was Hofer describing what we now know is our polyvagal system? Sounds like it. He was indeed a man ahead of his time. Nostalgia, that is homesickness, as a medical condition was documented widely during the American Civil War. In her book, Susan Matt documents more than 5,200 cases recorded, including, on the Union side, 74 deaths from homesickness. It was a similar scenario to the homesickness epidemic during the French Revolution, and this homesickness in America was viewed as a very real threat to the American troops. So much so that certain songs believed to be triggers for domestic yearning or possible desertion were banned. They included Home Sweet Home, the most popular song of the time, and Auld Lang Syne. By the earliest part of the 20th century, however, homesickness as a medical condition, interestingly, fell out of favor in American culture. as it was believed to be incongruent with the growing forces of capitalism that were taking hold. In an economy that needed more mobile workers, Susan Matt explains there was no place for a medical condition that kept people tied to the place they were born. Susan Matt concludes that during the American Civil War, homesickness was a noble condition because it signified your love of wife or mother or child or place, and it signified your rootedness. These were all seen as virtues. It was also a signal of your sensitivity. But by the 20th century, in the age of corporate capitalism, it became a weakness. Homesickness didn't disappear, but it did get shoved underground, morphed into no more than a pesky emotion as it fell out of medical use. Another set of current and ongoing geopolitical circumstances that has perpetuated a serious new epidemic of suffering and global homesickness are immigrants and refugees as they flee war and persecution and poverty all over the world, and are either forced out or rush away from their beloved homes in a nomadic search for safety, security, and a new place to call home. Psychotherapist Sarah Temple Smith works for the British Refugee Council, which provides help for child refugees in the UK. She emphasizes the idea of home as a complicated one that permeates every part of our lives. She says, we talk about loss of home for refugees as an existential loss. When a young person sits in the therapy room and their body slumps and tears roll down their face, that's what they're experiencing. If you've lost your home, you've lost everything. To have your home shut its doors to you for whatever reason, it's like someone cut off your legs. You can no longer stand upright. You can no longer move yourself. It's a loss of attachment in an absolute sense of being part of your world. Temple Smith explains that home incorporates far more than the buildings you grew up in. It also is more than the family and community relationships that you enjoyed. Home is how we relate to everything around us. And homesickness represents the trauma of the loss of how we relate to everything around us. Alas, it's quite simply something that will never leave us. Homesickness is still very real, very complex, and very powerful emotion. An aching longing for something we can't quite name. A sense of displacement or exile from a place or a state of being that we yearn to return to. We can be debilitatingly homesick for a place, for a community, for a way of life, for lives not lived, for a person loved, and for people lost. So if we know that homesickness will remain our perpetual companion, how will we befriend her? How will we navigate the spiritual wilderness she will get us lost in? And how will we find our way back home? First, let's acknowledge our homesickness, honor it, and recognize it as a part of our core human nature. Let us allow ourselves to feel the longing, feel the ache, feel the sense of loss without judgment or resistance. Let's recognize that homesickness is not a weakness or a failure, but a sign of our deep desire for something more free, something more real, something more safe, something more dependable. Let's use these desires and longings as the energy we'll need to explore this wilderness of our own hearts and souls, looking for what we are missing to feel at home in the world. This will invariably involve facing difficult emotions, confronting our doubts and our fears, and letting go of old patterns and beliefs that no longer serve us. Alas, it will be neither simple, nor easy, nor avoidable. So when you sense homesickness coming to visit, that existential, empty, heartsick longing, and she will come to visit, in all likelihood, as she did again for me this year. Remember to take a pause, take a breath, look for her, and take her hand. All she wants is for you to lead her, to lead you both back home to community, back home to vocation, to place, back to a new way of being, and back to a new understanding of yourself. Your real, original self. The one person who can give yourself, your community, and the world your own gift of redefining and reimagining what home really is and what home really means, one secure attachment at a time. As you walk with homesickness hand in hand, walk with kindness, walk with curiosity and creativity, walk with patience and understanding, and walk with a sense of humor and a deep love for her longing. And now, I may have some advice that even I can believe in. I think that maybe home is where you hold hands with your longing. Welcome home, one and all. Amen. Thank you. Before our benediction, I invite those of you in the Zoom room to please reach your hands and touch the size of your virtual square. And those of you in the sanctuary to please raise your hands, palm out. Let's send loving kindness to the people on the left and the right of you, and send loving kindness to the person on either side of them. Send out love into this beloved spiritual community and feel it coming back to you. Love is the spirit of this congregation. And now for our benediction, I invite you to put your hands together over your heart in Namaste. I bow to the divine in you. Beloved spiritual companions, homesick, heartsick, hesitant, and reluctant wanderers, let's begin here at Arlington Street to do what we can to feel at home in the world with each other, whether we're friends or strangers, and with ourselves, whether we feel rooted or untethered. As we leave here today, may we all take with us the blessing of being welcomed home, a feeling that wraps us in warmth, sustenance, shelter, accompaniment, and safety. May we all find our way home, home to ourselves, home to one another, home to the sacred, however we understand it. And may we do so with courage, with grace, and with an open heart. In this remembering of home, let's also remember joy is not a trick. May it be so. Amen. Let us keep the faith, beloveds, and pass it on. The service begins when the service ends. Bless your hearts. I love you. Amen.
Where you go, I will go.
Please visit ascboston.org for more information about this historic Unitarian Universalist congregation. Arlington Street Church, gathered in love and service for justice and peace.